Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Mapoor with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is in reference to the Deputy Prime Minister's meeting with the very important leadership of the U.S. and he's, of course, met the top diplomat, Rubio, as well. And there is a reaffirmation of the commitment to strengthening bilateral trade, investment relationships, and, of course, other strategic partnerships that Pakistan already enjoys with the United States. This is the very important interaction, of course, with the Deputy Prime Minister in his first meeting with Marco Rubio. But it's going to be important, of course, in terms of what that engagement will mean and transpire to, especially with the kind of statements that have come out regarding Pakistan's global and regional presence and the kind of important role that it has played in regional peace and stability. And then, of course, the efforts against counterterrorism, which has been lauded and appreciated. And, of course, the enhancement of trade and bilateral investment that has been emphasized as well. So we're going to be taking a closer look at what that will mean and what that will look like in the future. Our next segment is also going to be taking a look at what, of course, in the ways that we have seen different engagement happen with different countries, how the military leadership of Pakistan has also met with senior officials, including the foreign minister of China. And we saw that this engagement again emphasized the importance of this very important partnership between Pakistan and China, but also in terms of a reiteration of fighting common threats. And of course, that is important not just in terms of what happens in the region, but also in terms of other activities that Pakistan and China both can join hands against. And this has been one of the most integral points of the meetings that have been held with Field Marshal and on his visit to China. So we're going to be taking a closer look at what that will mean and translate into and how the existing partnership can be further strengthened. That will be the focus in the debate today. For this and more, as always, in the studio, we've been joined by senior analysts Farooq Patafi and Raja Faisal. And for our first segment, we've also been joined by Professor Carl Kaltenheder, who's a political analyst. Thank you very much, Carl, for joining us. And I hope I've not butchered your surname, but forgive me if I have. I'd like your insight first in terms of what really is, in the view of the leadership in the United States, the importance and role that Pakistan can truly play in terms of the interests that the United States has in its foreign policy agenda.
For having me on your show tonight. So Pakistan plays a pretty important role in the United States' really kind of strategic calculation in South Asia. Principally, the role that Pakistan plays is that it is integral to keeping stability in South Asia, principally between Pakistan and India. So the United States knows that an India-Pakistan relationship that is stable, that is not going to spill over into armed conflict, is absolutely necessary for the United States and what they're trying to achieve in the region. So stability in South Asia, that's the principal reason. But there's a secondary reason as well, and that is, and it's even more important, I would say, in the long run than stability in South Asia, and that is trying to build a better relationship with Pakistan in the aim of maybe possibly helping with what some view as China's encroachment around the world against American interests. So the idea is that if the United States can build better relations with Pakistan, that may, to a degree, not peel Pakistan away from China, because that's not going to happen, but have a more balanced relationship between the United States and Pakistan, and it may be a more balanced relationship between China and Pakistan as well. So you have to understand the United States right now, it is a very strong emphasis in all kind of security conversations in this country as to how to best deal with China in terms of its geopolitical aims in Asia, the South China Sea, the economic threat that's viewed to be emanating from China, and also the development of Chinese technology. There's a view in the United States that China and the United States are in a technological race. And so there's multiple different dimensions where the United States views itself in competition with China, and Pakistan is seen as part of that competition.
Right. So, Professor Carl, I'd like your take then in terms of also, because it's important to Pakistan and how we're strategically placed and what our history has been both with China and India. And of course, we've always talked about regional peace and stability. So it's also integral for us to understand the partnership that the U.S. has with India, and in particular terms, of course, with the kind of interest that you have outlined with regards to China that the U.S. has in the region as well. And so what will that dynamic mean for Pakistan and U.S. relationship?
Well, I think there's definitely room for positive growth in the Pakistani-U.S. relationship. There was a very tense set of years between 2001 and relatively recently between the United States and Pakistan, where those two countries were at the same time partners, yet at the same time competitors in terms of what their interests were in South Asia. The principal place where this played itself out was in Afghanistan. Now that the Taliban have taken over in Afghanistan, it's interesting that to a degree, the United States and Pakistan kind of find themselves on more of the same page than they were prior to the Taliban taking over, whereas the Taliban is a security concern for the United States, but it's even, I would argue, and I think many would agree with me, greater security concern for Pakistan now, given the terrorist threats that are emanating from Afghanistan now. So I think there's room to grow in the sense that the United States and Pakistan share some common interests. The United States has a lot to offer that Pakistan needs. Economic-wise, technology-wise, military cooperation-wise. And Pakistan can play an important role, like I said before, in the United States' strategic calculation of what it would like South Asia and Asia in general to look like.
Professor Karl, when we talk about Pakistan, of course, in the recent bilateral interactions between Pakistan and US, it has been highlighted that Pakistan is interested in cooperating with US, and US itself, of course, is putting focus on cryptocurrency. And we have seen that in recent times, of course, Pakistan's SAPM, Bilal bin Saqib, he has been quite pivotal in terms of his meetings with his counterparts on the other side. And of course, both of the countries, they are heading towards the futuristic coin systems or currency system, if we call it. And second thing which is quite important is that Pakistan was attracting investments, FDIs, in shape of, Pakistan has a lot to offer in terms of minerals. And Pakistan portraying multipolar approach. Of course, when China is involved in exploration in Pakistan, Pakistan wants US to play its role as well in terms of investments in this sector. So can we expect that this would be a highlight in this visit?
I think so. I think one of the things that's particularly important here to realize is that Pakistan is on President Trump's radar. And that's very important because there's many countries around the world that are not on his radar, and so they don't get much attention. And sometimes those countries may need attention, but they're just not something that he's concerned about. Pakistan is important to him. Part of it is because what you mentioned before, cryptocurrency. That is something that is very important to Donald Trump. He has his own stake in that. He has his own personal views on that and sees it as a really important thing in the future of finance. So that's important. I think also Pakistan has played its cards very well. Some of this has been state generated and some of it's just luck for the United States and for Pakistan, in that you've got people who are investing in the United States. Donald Trump looks at the world differently than other US presidents have, in the sense that he looks at kind of a balance sheet and he sees who's investing in the United States and who's taking from the United States. So part of the reason, for example, he has such a hard time with China is when he looks at this, quote unquote, balance sheet with China, he sees Chinese imports coming into the United States. He doesn't see American exports going to China in nearly the same amount. When he looks at Pakistan, he thinks, okay, this is a country that's actually investing in the United States. The balance sheet looks more positive. So Pakistan is, in his view, not ripping the United States off the way some other countries have. And that's luck for Pakistan, because even if you're a long-term ally of the United States, like Korea, South Korea, or Japan, or some of these other countries, if your balance sheet doesn't look good in his eyes, you'll incur his wrath. So Pakistan has gotten lucky this way.
Right, and Farooq, I want your take on this, because whether or not we actually are viewing the situation in the same lens or not, and when we talk about strategic partnership, it's of course between two partners. So how do you look at this?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question. My good greetings to Professor. And regarding what we have discussed so far, I wanted to actually, want you to actually look at it through my eyes.
Yeah.
My biggest problem is that I'm really fatigued by the bottlenecks of the past, and particularly the straitjackets of political opportunism in the past, right? For example, when it came to the First World War, at that time, everybody knew that the world had this balance of power mechanism, and that continued for quite some time. But after that, we started inventing more constructs, for example, Cold War and umpteen other things, right? And that has continued to this day. Every time we try to actually reinvent this, put the same old wine in new bottle, and we try to sell it. But the circumstances are changing very quickly. And what is most important is that human population is growing, our challenges are growing, and AI is coming. With that kind of technological, challenges to human race, if we think that now it is going to be a policy of containment or some kind of confrontation, and then you have to have your spheres of influence, I think that will be most unfortunate. So my humble summation has been that everybody, and I have repeatedly told you that I'm a follower of Karl Popper, and Karl Popper essentially actually really dismisses any idea of historiography or historicism, so to speak, that history somehow has some structure and some meaning, and you have to actually try to create the kind of end state that you want. I think that in the end, the only end state that matters is all countries work together. Now approaches will differ. President Obama had his different approach. President Trump had his own, and he still has his own. Trump 1, Trump 2 are different, and then you saw Biden's approach as well. What is important is that for a country like Pakistan, which has this deep ties with America, and then it also had a long, deep, close ties with China, we have a great opportunity to dispel the idea of decoupling or the idea of a new Cold War. So in the past also, we played a very important role in actually providing the opportunity back in 1960s but to the US to meet with Chinese leadership, and of course they took it from there. Now what is happening is that recently, when Pakistan became a part of CPEC, at that time, and Pakistan, given that Pakistan is also constantly interacting with IMF and the US and every other Western economic order, so Pakistan could be the place where both sides could actually sit and compare notes. Similarly, now when it comes to AI, and AI might actually redefine the contours of world politics, at that time also, I think we are the melting pot where both these very important powers can actually shake hands and work together. We become the, like parents fight all the time, but they stay together for the sake of children. So similarly, Pakistan becomes one of those assets that can compel both sides to work together. Now, given that President Trump has been very kind, especially in this term, and Pakistan has tried to reciprocate, I think that that is also very important, because Pakistan seems to be, after a long period of economic hardship and after a long period of diplomatic isolation, the country is coming out of that shell and seems to be actually proving itself again and again. If Pakistan can build a case that both these countries can work together. Not that woo us at the cost of the other, but actually work with us and let us build something more beautiful and comprehensive. I think it is going to help everybody. President Trump's approach so far has been that America's people have been at the receiving end, because other countries, our close partners, have been actually are expecting a lot of benefits from us without actually reciprocating. And whether you believe that or not, if you see a dispassionate, look at the dispassionate, look at the history with dispassionate approach, you will find certain facts which actually point to this direction. So I think that whatever he is doing, it sounds convincing to me, and Pakistan is ready to work with any country and every country, especially one of the closest allies of the country, right? If we can work with these two countries, I would one day want to see that Pakistan can work with other countries that with whom we keep on exchanging, missiles rather than any kind of flowers. So right now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and he is a brilliant guy. He has repeatedly shown his mettle. I've been following his politics since 2016, and I think that he has proven time and again to be a brilliant mind and a voice of mortality. So let us hope that in coming days, this relationship strengthens.
Absolutely. Professor Khan, I also want you to take in terms of the practical ways that we can work together also. When we talk about the mutual goals that we have or how we can support each other, what has been stressed is also counterterrorism efforts. And we saw that that's not just part of this meeting, but also previously by the US president as well, in terms of the actions that Pakistan has taken. And so while that is being lauded, I want your take on what that would mean in terms of actual tangible action on ground that can be expected as cooperation between both the sides. Can there be real substantial activities that can be undertaken by both parties jointly for counterterrorism efforts in the region?
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things I would stress about that is there's the cooperation that you see in the open, and there's the cooperation that we don't see in the open that is very important. And what I mean by that is the cooperation that happens between our intelligence services. That is key. Passing intelligence back and forth, even joint operations, clandestine operations, all of those kinds of things can be very important in counterterrorism, as we've seen in the past. So there's a robust relationship, a strong relationship between the CIA and other US intelligence services agencies and the Pakistani intelligence establishment, principally ISI. So that's continuing, and I think, if anything, that'll probably grow as Afghanistan, once again, to stress, this is a common problem now. This is a problem for the United States and for Pakistan, and even the greater world. An Afghanistan that may harbor some of these terrorist groups becomes a threat to many countries around the world, not just Pakistan, not just the United States. Not just Iran, other countries that face this threat. So, like I said, there's the covert cooperation that's important, but there's also overt cooperation that can happen. I think a lot of people don't realize the level of cooperation that already exists between the Pakistani and US military. So I occasionally lecture at West Point, and in that academy, every time I go there, I see Pakistani cadets. So there are Pakistani military cadets who are studying there at West Point, who are getting to know the American way of conducting military operations, the way that we teach our military culture to our new officers. And so these Pakistani students, or young officers, go back to Pakistan, and they know how to interact with our military. They speak our language. They know our ways of thinking about strategic culture. I think it won't shrink. And I think part of it is because we know we have an important strategic partner in Pakistan. But also, like I said, to stress again, Pakistan will benefit from the strategic competition between China and the United States. I don't see Pakistan suffering from that. I see Pakistan benefiting from that. So I think more military cooperation is likely, given the common threats that the countries face, but also an attempt by the United States to have a very favorable relationship with Pakistan.
Professor Kaul, when we talk about our eastern neighbor India, of course, they are our adversaries as well. You know, right after May 2025 war, of course, everyone knows that President Donald Trump, he played the role. He himself claimed that he was the one who actually was contacted by Indian side, and that's how the role was played. And when we talk about Vice President J.D. Vance, he said the same thing. When we talk about Secretary of the State Marco Rubio, he said the same thing. But whenever we hear from the Indian side, especially Prime Minister Modi, it is understandable that there is an election month coming very soon, because there is a very important election upcoming, I think it's in October. That's why they are trying to shy away from that notion that Americans played their role. They keep on maintaining that, they keep on discrediting US on this, that US had any role to play in terms of calming the situation down. Is it going to play in a positive side for Pakistan and negative side of India, or it is just timely, and in coming future the things might turn out to be all okay for India?
Well, I think you raise a really important point. And when I saw what happened there, my first thought was, this is humiliating for Modi. This is the United States intervening in a conflict that the Indians would not really want the United States to intervene in. Because what it basically means is that it gives some credence in the Indian eyes to Pakistani desires and wishes for decades to get an international presence or arbitrator in the conflict over Kashmir. And in the general India-Pakistan adversarial relationship. And the United States has shied away from that for decades. And here Pakistan is in a way vindicated by Trump saying, okay, I'm going to get involved in this, and I'm going to say we need peace. No more conflict here, at least no more armed conflict. For the Indian side, I think that was a real slap in the face, because I think they had figured that the United States was firmly on their side, because they're both on the same side when it comes to strategic competition with China. But what they learned was the United States is not as firmly on the Indian side as they thought. The United States is not going to sit aside when there's a war going on that looked like it potentially could spiral out of control. Trump said this has to end. And Trump is a very results-oriented person. He's not patient. When he sees a problem, he wants it solved immediately. Or if he doesn't see it going to be solved immediately, he just ignores it. He turns away from it and goes to the next issue. But I think he said this war, this hot war, the kinetic war, has to end. He got involved, and I think the Indians are probably second guessing what they thought was a strategic relationship with the United States. There's another thing, though, that's also, I think, having the Indians second guess their relationship with the US. Trump has come down hard on the Indians about the trade imbalance between India and the United States. India is in his crosshairs because that balance that I mentioned before, it's not positive for the United States when it comes to India. And so Modi, who probably thought that he had a very close friend in Donald Trump, now finds himself that Trump puts India in the crosshairs over trade, but also does what India doesn't want it to do when it came to the short armed conflict between India and Pakistan. So India was humiliated on a few different levels in that conflict. Militarily, they did not do well. And then the United States came in ways that was, to a degree, in India's view, a bit of a nightmare.
Right. Professor, since you were talking about Operation Sindoor, let us go back to that. And one question that came to my mind while you were actually answering the question, and that was attribution of agency. For example, I felt that you are saying that it was President Trump who actually took initiative, and he actually intervened in an ongoing conflict, and he found a solution to that. Of course, that is one interpretation. But then there is also this interpretation which is coming from the US government itself, that it was Indians that approached America, and they asked that now we wanted to stop. The only problem was that they did not want this to go on record. So should it be essentially a problem with the President Trump, or there is some problem with the Indian side also, because their own narrative does not seem to match? For example, their army, deputy army chief is saying something else, their chairman CDS is saying something else, their foreign minister says something else, the NSA ends up saying that we had no loss at all. So who is telling the truth? There seems to be some credence to the fact that because Indians were not ready for the blowback of their own failure to actually get the results they wanted, now they just want to hate anybody who is publicly outing that they reached out to the US.
Well, first of all, I have to say, obviously, I was not privy to the conversations in the White House and the State Department as to what to do about the situation involving India and Pakistan when there was a kinetic conflict going on. In the professional press, if you want to call it that here, the foreign policy wonk press that I follow, and people who I've talked to who are close to decision makers in Washington, this was an issue that was brought to Trump by American decision makers. My best reading of it is that it was Rubio who actually brought it to his attention, and Trump said we need to act on this. I think what you're seeing from the Indian side is probably an attempt to save face, because, like I said, I'm not trying to take sides or pick on the Indians, but I think from their standpoint, what Trump did was not something that they wanted to happen. Because what it did was legitimize the Pakistani narrative that the conflict that's been brewing between the two countries since partition needs an international arbitrator. And India has always said no, that's not necessary.
Let us, I totally I get what you're saying. Let us try to actually just reverse engineer this whole idea. And given that you have already said that you are trying to be as objective as possible, let me ask you, there is a very simple taste of the pudding. What do you think happened, at the start of conflict? Did Pakistan actually manage to shoot down Indian planes or not?
Yes. I mean, Pakistan shot down Indian planes with Chinese technology. The takeaway in the United States among national security experts is that this showed some very important things. It showed that Indian air-to-air missile technology, Chinese air-to-air missile technology is very good, and that the Pakistanis had been well trained on it, and that the Chinese were willing to help the Pakistanis in real time during that conflict. The Indians, on the other hand, their military technology, particularly their air power, is behind the times. They simply don't have what a country that size, with their kind of sense of threat, the way they define it. I'm not saying the way I define it, the way they define it. They are not where they should be in terms of military readiness. So those were the kind of main takeaways in the United States from the actual conflict, that much smaller Pakistan showed that it had a more formidable air force than India's air force. And a lot of that has to do with the help from China.
Reason I asked this question was because Indian side still cannot actually come on record and say that yes, there were certain planes that were downed. And I'm talking about the government, the NSA, the army chief doesn't seem to be visible. So there is something wrong with the Indian narrative also. And there is a possibility that India, after panicking, might have approached the US.
And their air marshal himself in the presser, he actually said that we did take the losses, but as long as our all of the pilots are safely home, we are okay with it.
Yeah, but on
right. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Modi and his military leadership are going to have to answer to public opinion why they had such a poor display of their military power in this conflict with Pakistan. There's some really important questions for people in India ask their leadership. How is this possible? The Indian economy is huge compared to the Pakistani economy. The Indian government has much more money to spend on the military. And so, it's not just this air conflict. Previous years where Pakistani jets have shot down Indian jets. I mean, think about it. When India is using MiG-21s, I mean, this wasn't true in the latest conflict, but not long ago, they were using MiG-21s against Pakistani F-16s. It's a generational difference in technology. Why is India so behind the curve? So this is obviously humiliating for Modi and for his military leadership.
Professor Karl, good news is that earlier this week they have actually retired their MiG-21s finally.
And it's not just about technology, it's also about who runs it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Karl, for joining us and being a part of the discussion and sharing your very important views with us. We're now going to move on to our next segment that takes a look at Pakistan and China's relationship and, of course, Field Marshal's visit to meet the top leadership. And I'm going to start with you, Faisal, with reference to what we have seen previously, also the engagements of the Field Marshal recently had, of course, including the United States. China is a country that we've had such a long-standing partnership with. And so what does this meeting reflect in terms of where will this go from here and how much more collaborations or engagements can exist in terms of what China and Pakistan can do for each other with regards to mutual issues?
Sana, most of the stuff that has already been covered by Professor Karl regarding this as well. Yeah. Reason being, I mean, the recent war is a premier example in terms of, Pakistan and China's bilateral cooperation in terms of defense. And we already know that JF-17s, they are of course jointly produced, and of course it is something Pakistan is very proud of, and wherever JF-17 goes, everyone is simply watching this fighter jet, because this is a marvelous piece of engineering and of course the technology as well. And in the recent war, it actually showed that it has outsmarted the Indian adversaries. And when it comes to both of the countries having this cooperation, I think this visit is another example of Pakistan's multipolar approach, in terms that right now when we are doing first segment on Pakistan's visit to US, the second segment we are doing that Pakistan's Field Marshal Sayyid Asim Munir is currently in China, and of course it shows the importance of both the countries for Pakistan, and especially when it comes to China. Of course, Pakistan's firepower, Pakistan's defense, it has huge contribution from the Chinese side as well, especially in this recent war, May 2025. It has actually brought fruits for Pakistan in terms of that very cooperation we are highlighting here. There are more aspects of it which are going to be, of course, highlighted in coming months and years, and that is entirely related to fifth generation fighter jets. Of course, they have been offered from Chinese side to Pakistan, and Pakistan is going to get them. I'm talking about J-35s. And when we talk about further enhancement in terms of Pakistan's drone technology, further cooperations are going to be made between both of the countries. We already know that Pakistan is going to have further cooperation from the Turkey's side as well. But when it comes to China, Chinese technology plays really well with Pakistan's firepower and Pakistan's the gunners. They love that, and they know how to use it, and they know how to positively and more effectively use it, and they have given an excellent display in the recent war. This visit is very important in that context, and I think in coming months and years, we will be seeing more of that cooperation between Pakistan and China, especially Pakistan getting more of the joint productions with China inside Pakistan. And I think that is going to be pivotal, especially in terms of we already have seen, and Professor Karl was talking about air-to-air missile PL-15. PL-15 was decider, let's call it a decider. And when it comes to PL-15, Pakistan's firepower and Pakistan's fighter pilots, they have excelled in it, and they are the ones who have, of course, used them very professionally, and they are the only ones who have used them very professionally so far.
Right.
So that's why Pakistan is important, equally important for China, and China is equally important for Pakistan. And very recently I was talking to one of my diplomat friend from China, and he said to me that now even the Chinese companies, when they are handing over some kind of an offer to other countries for selling J-21s or their fighter jets, other fighter jets, they are adding in that the trainings would be given by Pakistani pilots. So this is something, it is very interesting. It shows that Pakistan's pilots, they have actually left that mark in there, and that is going to be pivotal. And to me, both of the countries, they are excellent when it comes to defense cooperation, and it is going to be further enhanced.
Right. Farooq, your take on this?
Right. Sana, when it comes to China, I consider myself to be quite articulate person when it comes to writing and speaking. But when it comes to, those moments when you love something so much that you actually lose words, you cannot express yourself, right? I think that throughout my life, and I've lived a long life so far, whenever I've met any Chinese individual, there hasn't been one that knew that I am a Pakistani and did not become extremely kind, right? And totally. And this is one personal memory that I have, and I have huge experiences. But I think that that is not all. Pakistan lucked out when Pakistan and China decided to actually forge this friendship that keeps giving, right? And but to actually summarize the Army Chief's visit to China, I would say that a great man actually went to a great country, so what is not to like? But Faisal keeps saying that Pakistan's approach is multipolar. Earlier, my dear professor was saying that Pakistan can benefit from the conflict or competition between China and America. My concern is that we have been forged by conflicts. We have been actually forged by fire. And our biggest problem has been that we somehow convinced ourselves that if there is a conflict, for example, Afghan Jihad, right? Before that, there was a Cold War. If there is a conflict, Pakistan benefits. In the end, what happened? The world order changed. Pakistan's fortunes did not. Similarly, war on terror. Now there is juxtaposition, difficult juxtaposition, but conflict will bring a lot of riches to Pakistan. And then what happened? In the end, we ended up losing 80,000 people to terrorism, and then also 150 billion. Look, these two countries are really good friends of ours. We care about them. Why ask them to fight among themselves? We will find, and we are very competent people, will find a way to work with both and benefit from their mutual friendship if we can actually convince them, right? Now, regarding China-Pakistan cooperation and what to get out of that. Of course, Pakistan is faced by a bully in India, and because of that, Pakistan has to keep on focusing on its military and security issues. But China is actually, and that's why I said we lucked out, because China has been this humongous, engine of growth and innovation and also good governance as well. So what we need to do now is actually ask the Chinese Prometheus to bring those fires also to Pakistan, particularly in AI. As I said, the CPEC and the IMF for Bretton Woods systems could have worked together and learned from each other. Similarly, now there are two silos of AI. One, the Chinese silo, the other one is the US, right? What we need now, because we can also work as a hub, they both can work in tandem, Pakistan also needs compute. We have to ask our American friends, our Chinese friends, that we need AI technology in the country so that we can build up something of the sort that can help both and can contribute to Pakistan's capacity as well. At this moment, unfortunately, because of the CHIPS Act and other acts, there is a limit to what Pakistan can get from the West, especially when it comes to advanced GPUs. Similarly, in China also, China is a bit reluctant, not towards Pakistan, but overall so far, because it has to first actually invest in its own technology. So we have to convince both sides that there is an opportunity here. If we can actually talk about cryptos, then we can talk about AI as well. I hope that in coming days we get all those benefits and we can contribute and pay back to all our friends as well, because then it will be truly a partnership to remember.
Absolutely. Thank you, Farooq, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate. As always, that's all that we have time for. But we'll be, of course, keeping an eye out for what goes on and how our engagements with different countries flourish. That's all we have from the show today. We'll now see you on Monday.